Is the hype around DragonCon real? That's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to another episode of How to DragonCon. My name is Kong. I will be your guide. Recently, there was a pretty popular post on Reddit where someone asked the question if the hype around DragonCon was real. So if you are a newbie who has always been thinking about coming to the con, or maybe you've already made plans to attend this year, you've probably asked yourself that same question. Maybe you've heard from friends, maybe you've seen it online, maybe there's just like a mystique and aura about this convention. So I wanted to go over all the comments that people said in this thread, and of course share my opinions on it as well. Let me read what the actual OP asked in the question to begin with. I've been hearing about DragonCon for a while now. Is it really what it's amped up to be? Is it that different from MomoCon? And just to kind of use MomoCon as an example of a more conventional con, if anything, it takes place in a convention center. The hours, I think Momo does have some after parties and things like that, but it still more or less kind of starts slowing down around 7 or 8 o'clock. I think I saw that some of the after parties and stuff were paid that you had to get into. But again, more standard con affair, whereas DragonCon is different from that. Let's look at the highest rated comment. It says, DragonCon is basically a 5-day long party. They don't call it nerdy gras for nothing. Absolutely. That's probably the biggest reputation that DragonCon has out there in the convention scene, that it is the party con, it's nonstop, all that stuff. It's true. It's certainly there, and if that's your jam, there will be plenty of that to enjoy. I think even just attending, especially at nighttime, you'll see that stuff without really even trying too hard. Of course, we all party at different levels. Some people may be more introverted, not so much. That doesn't mean that it's not for you. Certainly, you can still do it your own way. There's actual programming, panels, things like that, that you can still do well late into the night. Gaming, board gaming, arcades, things like that. So you don't just have to party, but certainly that is the thing that DragonCon is very well known for. The second highest rated comment, DragonCon is a living, breathing organism that takes over a city for 5 days. I challenge anybody to find another con anywhere in the US that can be described exactly the same way accurately. Similar, the third comment says, I made the mistake of starting my con experience with DragonCon. No other con comes close. Absolutely. Both of those are something that I would agree with. I also attended DragonCon as my first convention, especially early on when I got hooked, and I was pretty obsessed about the con. No other conventions came close to matching the vibes and the feelings that I got. And that's not really fair to the other cons because I don't think that's what they seek out to do. Again, they are more of a typical con experience. That's what they're going to provide. DragonCon just happens to be unique. I have heard there are other conventions similar to it, like MagFest. Maybe if the theme of the con is music related or party related, then yeah, it's going to be more similar to DragonCon, but it is a rare thing. I wouldn't say that it's 100% unique, but it certainly stands out amongst most conventions out there. This is a funny one. Hugely, enormously different from MomoCon. Momo on steroids times 10, and just about every other fandom you can think of. So that's actually a really good point. DragonCon is really like multiple small cons happening at once. Again, going back to Momo, it's primarily anime and video game. Those are the two main themes. DragonCon will still have anime and video games, but in addition, it'll have stuff like fantasy. It will have British-based sci-fi and other related shows. It'll have Star Trek, Star Wars, just to track on cosplaying and costuming, like really the nitty-gritty of how to do that stuff. Even one completely dedicated to more kids-friendly type media that people can take their kids to. So it's not just really one con, even though it is one big con. It's more like a big umbrella that houses several different cons that are going on at the same time. And depending on your interest, you can spend as little or as much time as you want under a certain fandom. Here's a good one as well. The hype is real. DragonCon is absolutely the best convention in the world. There's nothing else like it anywhere. However, if you're new, it can be extremely overwhelming, and you just have to understand that you will never accomplish everything you intend to. And then go on to add, for me, I think trying to plan the weekend is a fool's errand, and at most, you should shoot for a rough outline and 2 or 3 must-see events, no more than 1 a day. That is actually a great event coming obviously from a DragonCon veteran. There's so much to do. And I'll get to another comment later that talks about the schedule. That does not come out until the week before. So I know as a newbie, that is really rough for you to try to plan ahead, knowing that it's going to be overwhelming when the schedule just isn't there for you to look at and plan. So what you can do is go ahead and download the DragonCon app. The previous year's schedule should still be on there. So you can go look at 2023. More or less, it's going to look the same. The formatting, the events, the schedule, the grid, all that stuff. So if you look at it and at least have a basic understanding of the layout of how the con organizes things, there should also be some maps that are very useful that tells you where the events take place. If you can at least get a feel for that early on, it's just a matter of waiting for when the 2024 app and schedule comes out a week before the con, and it just kind of updates where everything's going to go. So I think that would be tremendous help for those who love to plan ahead and be ready. Okay, someone really went out of their way to give some good advice, but let me go over some of this. It is crowded, absolutely. I think the numbers are starting to get back into the 60s and 70K range. If it starts getting to 80, it's going to be ultra crowded, and in fact, some parts are just going to be flat out annoying and almost unbearable. We'll see where 2024 gets to, but it is very crowded, and because it's actually in 5 different hotels plus the America's Mart, trying to get to and from each of the main hotels is probably going to be where the bottleneck happens, right? So if you're in the main lobby, that's fine. If you're trying to go up and down an escalator or a tunnel from one hotel to another, that's where a lot of the lag and the crowding and stuff happens. Thankfully, you can always go outside and take the streets and the sidewalk, but it is pretty much the end of summer in Atlanta, so it's going to be very hot and muggy outside, but at least you won't feel like you're trapped in a small tunnel with hundreds of other nerds. People watch, take photos, go hang out in the hotel lobbies where the DJs are playing, as well as the courtyard. Yeah, so that's probably one of the biggest advantages of DragonCon is pretty much happening all around you. There isn't one specific area, one main lobby, one big open space where everyone convenes. It's always moving. It really is like a moving organism that someone else said. And depending on where you are in each of the hotels, it is a little bit of a different vibe, but you can pretty much people watch anywhere. And there are amazing costumes, there's funny costumes, there's just really cool interactions going on between like-minded people. So I certainly hope that you can run into some of them while you're making your laps around the hotels. Oh, other small ones, comfortable shoes, water, these are kind of a given, but again, if you're not used to the Atlanta heat, definitely take that into consideration. Don't miss the gaming area. Yeah, so this really encompasses a lot. There's not only an arcade, but actually board gaming. And these are just massive areas in the America's Mart where you can kind of take a break from all the walking and people watching and cosplay and just sit down, kind of relax, maybe meet up with some friends or even drop in on some strangers and have a different way that you're experiencing the next few hours. All right, last but not least, this is my actual comment. I'm just going to kind of read it word for word and then expand a little bit on it. Yes, the hype is real, but let me add a caveat so your expectations aren't too high. It is a great time, possibly the bestest time, a con like no other. To me, it is. But that's because I've been going for over a decade. I know the layout well. I'm familiar with the events. I know the pros and cons. I know what to avoid. I have lots of options for social groups to mingle with and people to run into, and I've nailed down a routine of what works for me on each day. Obviously, for a first timer, you're not going to have all that. So if you just go into it with a curiosity of how good it can be, you'll have a better time versus trying to compare and expect it to live up to some legendary status that it has online. Yeah, so pretty much, of course, I think I said it pretty well. As with any big events that you are hyping yourself up for, it could always let you down because, if it lives in your head as this mythical thing, that's hard for anything to live up to, even for me. There's a certain amount of expectations that you should temper. Yes, it will be fun. Yes, there'll be cool things to see. Will it be absolutely perfect and go according to plan and be what you want? Highly, highly doubtful. Again, you are sharing that space with tens of thousands of other people. Some people may be in a bad mood. Again, it's hot, muggy, bad smells and BO around. Just kind of things like that to keep in mind. And again, if you're a newbie or a first timer, it's all overwhelming. There's going to be a big learning curve for you in the beginning. Just trying to figure out how to get from one event to another. Maybe trying to figure out where you want to rest, where you want to go get something to eat, things like that. So it's not without its stress and its flaws, but DragonCon is still incredibly enjoyable for me, even after 15 years of attending. I hope some of those different comments and thoughts has given you better insight and help you prepare in case you are planning to come to DragonCon for the first time this year. So anyways, thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.